Coming up on this week's edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
We'll talk about the Federation of State Beef Councils and its value to the long-term success of the beef industry. Plus, we'll highlight some of the ways the Federation puts checkoff dollars to work to help build beef demand.
And now, NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
Hello and welcome to a special edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. I'm Kevin Ochsner. It's no secret that we as beef producers are stronger when we work together to encourage consumers to eat beef. That concept is part of the reason the Federation of State Beef Councils exists. Today, we're going to take a closer look at the structure and role of NCBA's Federation Division, which serves as a contractor to the Beef Checkoff Program. Joining me now is Oklahoma cattleman Clay Bertram, who serves as chair of the Federation of State Beef Councils, and Dan Gaddis. He's a Texas cattleman who is a Federation member of NCBA's Executive Committee. Clay, let's start with you. Can you tell us just a little bit about the Federation and who makes up the Federation?
Yeah, Kevin, thank you for having me today. The Federation is housed within NCBA, but is an independent organization with 44 partners among our State Beef Council partners. And we strive to build beef demand within the industry with all of our partners, and we're made up of 74% of cow-calf producers among the United States.
Wow. And Dan, why is the Federation so important to the broader beef industry?
Well, thank you, Kevin. Like Clay said, the Federation is made up of the 44 qualified state beef councils across the nation. And really, the Federation is the voice of those state beef councils, and as a result, really the voice of our cattle producers across the nation in how those checkoff dollars get spent. The Federation gets to help decide how the 50 cents of the dollar that goes to the national gets spent on beef checkoff programs to increase beef demand by being a part of the operating committee. 10 of the members of the 20-member committee are actually come from the Federation of State Beef Councils organization. And so there's a big influence that cattle producers and ultimately state beef councils have in how those dollars get spent. In addition to that, the Federation of the Beef Councils looks at the other 50 cents that stays within the state. And those beef councils have an opportunity to potentially invest their dollars that could have stayed in the state for some national programs and to partner with the National Checkoff Program through the Federation, really driving beef demand nationally. And hopefully, that flows back to their communities.
You bet. And one thing you mentioned, you talked about producer leaders. And I think one thing that sometimes is a misconception is the fact that this is really driven by volunteer producer leaders. Clay, tell us a little bit about how programs are selected for funding and then how you evaluate programs on the backside.
Well, it really all starts here. We're here in Nashville at convention. This is where we're being filmed. And it starts right here with the committee processes, and it starts with that as we all have come here as volunteer leaders to start with this process as we evaluate these ARs. And as we lead up to the operating committee meeting here in September, where we talk about the funding and how those are evaluated, from research to domestic marketing to national programs of producer communications. And like Dan said, 10 members of the Federation and 10 members of the Cattlemen's Beef Board that are all voluntary leaders. We're not paid to do this. And you got to remember that this is a recovery program. The money is put forth and then it's submitted back to get recovery. The way that these are funded. 74% of these are cow-calf producers, just like Dan and I in Texas and Oklahoma, to way that these are produced in recovery process to get this money put back.
And tell us about the evaluation process then on the backside.
So then we come back and we look at all of how these programs were evaluated, and we look to make sure that those producer dollars were spent wisely. If you don't remember anything I say today, remember that $1 invested returns $11.91 back to your pocket.
That's pretty impressive. Thank you, gentlemen. Recently, the Federation of State Beef Councils partnered with the Daytona International Speedway to sponsor NASCAR's season opening race, the Beef It's What's for Dinner 300. Here's a look at some of the excitement surrounding that big event.
Welcome to the Beef It's What's for Dinner 300.
Here to say the most famous words in motorsports, please welcome from Okeechobee, Florida, Chairman of the Florida Beef Council, Flint Johns.
On behalf of beef farmers and ranchers across America,
let's get this show on the road. Drivers,
start your engines.
40th annual Beef It's What's for Dinner 300 and the NASCAR Xfinity Series season is underway.
I think that Ford of Cindric is strong.
Look at them tomahawks. I want one.
and they got some beef in Victory Lane. If you don't mind, I'd love to have some of that.
Through the tri-oval, Cindric is out front.
Not bad, man! Woo! Yes! Yes! 2021, let's go!
Just real quick, are you gonna have beef for dinner?
Beef is what's for dinner. Beef's the word tonight.
Now, I'd like to welcome Deanne Maples, Director of Beef Marketing and Promotion for the Florida Beef Council. Deanne, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Kevin, for having me.
I've got to ask you, why NASCAR? Of all the events you could have engaged with and sponsored, why did you choose NASCAR?
Well, I would suppose the simple answer is it was a great opportunity. The chance to put beef on national TV is something we certainly don't want to pass up. But, you know, when you look at the sport, if you've ever tuned in to auto racing, you'll hear, welcome back to the Beef It's What's for Dinner 300 over and over again. And so, of course, we were chasing that. We wanted the opportunity for that brand recognition there. But then you take a step away from that and you look at the NASCAR fan as well. NASCAR, I think, has done something in their sport that other sports attempt to replicate but never really duplicate, and that is that they create a brand loyalty among their fans like no other sport has done. So we break down the demographic of the fan. First off, ages 25 to 54, which is an area that we want to target in the beef industry. We are trying to speak to those grocery shopping families. It's a good mix of males and females and households that have children. I mean, again, areas that we want to speak to. But then you look at the brand loyalty among that fan base, and it's kind of no secret that those folks, they want to support the companies and the products that sponsor their sport. And so for us, we want them to buy beef. When they're on their having their tailgates and they're grilling at home with family and friends, we want them to purchase our product. And so having a chance to connect with those folks, I think it was just a no-brainer for us to be a part of.
And Clay, we were talking earlier, it's been a while since beef has been on national TV, right?
Yeah, Kevin, it's been since 2003. And, you know, during the holiday time, we were on TV with Hallmark. And so then to bring back, to just come on TV with NASCAR in February was a huge media buy, as Deanne mentioned for us. And just to build on that, and you look at the impact now as we look back at the data that we now have, 1.9 billion consumers and building. Every time they mention Austin Cindric, who won the Beef It's What's for Dinner 300, we continue to build on that. And, you know, we're still on the track today. Our logo is still on the track. We're still on the menus there at the race today. And we continue to build beef demand for that $11.91 return on investment that we continue to have for the consumers and the beef producers out there today. So it was a very good media buy for us that we continue to have out there in that sponsorship.
You mentioned the $11.91 return on investment broadly, but I'm curious, tell me more about how you have gauged or measured the specific impact of this event.
As Clay alluded to, you know, we're still seeing our product out there. They're still mentioning it. Just the other day I was listening and it was a typical Sunday race on the radio, and Beef It's What's for Dinner ads come on. So, you know, for us to continue to measure it, it might be a little bit difficult. I think that the numbers, the return was far beyond what we ever expected. I mean, at 1.9 billion, that's just a number. I don't know about Clay, but I certainly didn't see it even being. It was just tremendous. So, you know, I'm not sure when we're ever going to see the full measure of this investment.
So I'm curious, now this happened in Florida. But what are the benefits to other states, or are there benefits to other states of an activity like this where investment dollars are spent of the beef industry in one given state?
Oh, absolutely, Kevin. You know, in fact, the Texas Beef Council, where I serve, we actually invested some of our own dollars towards this event, and sent chefs to help participate in that event, to go and cook and do demonstrations and cook for the drivers that were there, because we know that if we can increase beef demand, that it's going to ultimately flow back to our states and to our producers. We believe in that. You know, where we produce beef cattle isn't always where all the people are. And so we have to go and look at where those consumers are to hit them. The other issue for us in Texas and the other beef councils that were participated is that, you know, this is a big event. And so many of our producers are saying to us, because we do a lot of online marketing because it's very effective. Right. Those dollars are very well spent there, but they don't see it as often. And so this is the type of event that they're saying, you know, we want to be a winner, and we want to be looked at as a winner. Well, when you're at the Beef It's What for Dinner 300, you're the title sponsor, you're a winner. Yes. And I think that, you know, our producers enjoyed that, but we also recognize that there's huge benefits to that, you know, that go on and on and on past the event. So we are a fan of it, and I think most of the beef councils across the nation, you know, look at this type of event and say, this is something we need to invest in and be part of.
You know, Dan mentioned the benefits of it, and it was so much of a benefit, Kevin, that we're doing it again.
Oh, that's fantastic.
2022, we are going back to Daytona, and we only had 6 weeks to prepare for it last time. Okay. Now we're having a little over 8 months to prepare for it. So be ready for a bigger and better Beef It's What's for Dinner 300 in 2022.
Well, it was pretty exciting, Deanne.
It was pretty exciting, and I'll just add on to what Dan said as well. You know, we did, the beef-loving chefs came to town, and they were tremendous for us. But, you know, while it was in our backyard, I say my backyard because it's Florida, and the truth is I live about 15 minutes from that racetrack. So on a quiet day when those drivers are up there, you know, testing, I can hear them at my house. So I'm close by to it. But, you know, while it was in our backyard in Florida, the interesting thing is the fan base that comes to town to watch that race. The numbers are that it's more than 60% come from other states, and they come and they vacation. And so on one day, within 5 minutes of just kind of driving around that infield campground, we counted 27 different state license plates. So they're coming from all over. And I think that the thing that we all strive to do working in the beef industry is remember that it takes a village. We are one team doing this together. So the fact that Texas came to town to help and some other state beef councils came to town to help, I mean, really humbling for us in Florida to have them, their support as well, but we couldn't have done it without them. And so I think, you know, our producers work really hard day in and day out to grow a great product, and they're from the East Coast to the West Coast, and the fan base of NASCAR is from the East Coast to the West Coast and the North to the South. And so it's tremendous, right? It's really for the benefit, as Dan said, for the entire beef industry. I think we all go to work every day with the goal of putting beef on somebody's supper plate at night. And so whatever it takes to get that done, the team is going, you know, we're going to do that. And I think one thing also worth mentioning that was fun to see is when that group of state beef council folks, we called them the pit crew, right? We called them the beef pit crew on the ground. And we had the opportunity to get out together and see some of those fans. And the one thing, you know, we would ask them, what are you grilling today? What's on your tailgate? And, you know, do you have any beef? And they'd say, come on over. And they'd open a cooler and they'd say, well, you know, and it's loaded with beef. And we'd say, well, on Friday, we're going to cook steaks, and on Saturday we're smoking brisket, and on Sunday we're cooking prime rib. And so the takeaway that I got from that was, if you watched NASCAR and you watch that week of racing there, the events grow in prominence as the week goes on. And so for them, as those races became bigger, we were the protein. Beef was the protein they wanted on their grill. They associated our premier product with those premier race events. And I think that's something that all the state beef councils, the Federation of State Beef Councils, we work to do every single day. We want to be the front of their mind for their celebrations, their special events, and that confirmed to me that we are there.
That's fantastic news. As a Colorado producer, I just love seeing beef in the national spotlight, so I compliment you for that. Recently, the Federation was also involved with another event in Florida. This one was designed to show off some great recipes while highlighting the sustainability of the beef cattle industry. Let's take a look.
So we're out here at Blackbeard's Ranch where we did a satellite media tour. And a satellite media tour is a series of TV and radio interviews over a short period of time. So what we were doing out here is we set up in one place. We've got our rancher, we have a chef, and we're showcasing some beautiful, sustainably raised beef. We booked interviews with TV and radio stations across the country and did about 25 interviews in a 5-hour period.
So it's a great opportunity to be here at Blackbeard's Ranch in Florida to have this project funded by the Federation of State Beef Councils, talking about sustainability and what this means not only to our producers but our consumers as we reach out and talk about what sustainability means and what the impact this has on our environment.
We have to tell our sustainable story, and they want to know that sustainable story and how that land is taken care of, but also how that beef is produced. And then somebody like the chef can prepare all these great dishes and transfer that story right on to the consumer.
What an incredible event, Clay, that gave the beef industry some real national exposure. I wanted to ask a question relative to sustainability. I know it's a topic you discussed during that video shoot. Why is it so important to help consumers understand what we're doing from a sustainability standpoint?
Well, Kevin, it means so much that the Federation has put money behind it this year. Sustainability has always been around, but to cattle producers, it's come to the forefront this year. And like I said, we put money behind it. And it's about telling our story to not only the industry, but our peers and our consumers about what we do every day on our farm and ranch. And we have to be more vocal about it, about what we do every day, from feeding cows to rotational grazing to bull selection to what we do each and every day. And we have to learn to leave a legacy, to be able to pass that on to my daughters, to generations. Just like we've been talking about, sustainability is here to stay, and we have to talk about it.
So I'm curious, what's your sense of how impactful it was to have both a chef, Hugh Atchison, as well as Florida rancher Jim Strickland as part of that discussion?
Well, like we've said, it starts on the ranch with what Jim does on his ranch to bringing it to the plate, as we say, pasture to plate, from the cattle that we raise to the beef that's on that plate. And we have to show the consumers, like we know, many of them don't know where their food comes from, so we have to show them how it gets from pasture to plate and show them there. So that was a part of the satellite media tour where we were on radio, on TV, to show them how that product that we all love and love to consume got there for them.
Is that a more important issue to Florida consumers, as an example, the whole issue of sustainability, Deanna?
It is. Florida's unique. I think a lot of times people don't realize that we really have the volume of cattle that we have, and it's no secret people are moving into Florida every day at about 1,000 people a day. And where are we going to put everything? We're kind of landlocked. We're between the beaches is the phrase that we like to use, between the Atlantic coast and the Gulf Coast. And so what do we do with all this development that's happening? We still need our green spaces for our cattle, and so we're constantly talking about the importance of that, preserving that not just for wildlife habitat but water. We have to store water for all these people who are coming to town now. So it's definitely a hot topic for us in Florida, and we have such a melting pot of ages there, so it's really an area of large concern. And I'll tell you, just last week I was at a chef's conference, and more than 500 chefs. And there was a time that I would get a lot of questions about nutrition stuff, but last week they wanted to talk about sustainability. That's what their restaurant customers are asking about. And so it is a topic that we have to be out there in the front of. And we do a great job at it, so why not tell the story?
Dan, I'm curious, ratchet it up a level, and let's just talk about the Beef It's What's for Dinner campaign at large. Why do you think that's so critical to the ongoing success of the beef industry?
You know, it's iconic. I mean, when you really look at it. And so when you look at iconic brands that are out there that we remember all the way from the childhood up, I mean, I'm pretty sure that most people that you would go up to, even though that you wouldn't expect, you could look at them and go, beef, and they'd finish, it's what's for dinner.
Right.
I mean, and I think that's important because that is our branding. And so to be able to continue with that and to take that to a new generation so they understand, you know, that iconic brand and bringing to them the information that we need to bring as part of that whole campaign. I will tag on to the sustainability issue and say that, you know, if it's important to our consumer, then it needs to be important to us. And what's great for us is we don't have to change anything we're doing. We just have to tell the story of what we've been doing for generations. These ranches and these farms wouldn't be in the next generation if it wasn't sustainable. If we weren't able to take care of the land, we just have to tell our story. And when we tell our story, when we're able to get in front of that consumer, because of the iconic brand that we have, they listen and then they understand. They said, you know what, you're right, and we want to consume this product because it is a great product.
Well, I think people want to eat our product, but they want permission to eat our product. And I think the reality is that a lot of the fictitious myths that we've heard make some people feel guilty from a sustainability standpoint. So if we can help people understand what we're doing, allow them to do exactly what they want, which is to eat beef for dinner and lunch and breakfast. To find out more about events like the ones we just discussed, visit the Checkoff-funded website. That's beefitswhatsfordinner.com. Still ahead on NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen, we'll have more on the Federation of State Beef Councils, including a closer look at how states work together to drive beef demand. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
From the very beginning, Ritchie has been dedicated to one thing: helping people deliver fresh, constant water to their animals. Today's Ritchie waterers rely on a valve design that remains much the same as it was in 1921. It's a simple idea: do it right, and the rest will take care of itself. We never set out to create a company that would be around for 100 years. We just wanted to create something great.
Join the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. NCBA is the oldest cattle industry organization, working every day to defend your interests in Washington, D.C. And there are big benefits to being a member. You'll get news you can use in the National Cattlemen and policy updates from Beltway Beef, plus big discounts from John Deere, Cabela's, and more great partners. Join now. Call 866-233-3872 or sign up online at ncba.org.
Welcome back to this special edition of Cattlemen to Cattlemen, as we take a closer look at the Federation of State Beef Councils and how state beef councils play a critical role in driving beef demand. Now joining us is Lauren Mailing. She's the Executive Director of the Arizona Beef Council. Lauren, welcome to the show.
Great to join you all.
Let's begin the conversation about talking about that collaboration and the true partnership that exists between the Federation and the state beef councils.
Yes, a great benefit of the Federation of State Beef Councils is that collaboration between high cattle and beef producing states like Texas and Oklahoma and smaller cattle states like us in Arizona and many around the country, where we have a very large consumer population center. We have over 7 million people in Arizona, but a lot fewer cattle. So that collaboration and support from other cattle states to smaller states is very beneficial to reach consumers across the country. Especially important is that unified, cohesive message that we're able to extend from the national programs to extend to our large consumer bases.
So this past year has been unique in many ways given the pandemic, and I'm curious, Clay, while it created some challenges, it also created some opportunities for the beef industry, didn't it?
Yes, it has, Kevin, and we've already talked about one of those today, and that was the Beef It's What's for Dinner 300. It was a collaborative effort between the states and the Federation of State Beef Councils where we all partnered together to support that event. But not only that, but where the Federation is housed inside, we support our state beef councils with website design, IT support, where all of our states are the same across the board, where we support those small states like Arizona, larger states like Texas, and myself in Oklahoma. But we collaboratively work together to build beef demand across the states, where the Federation is housed within NCBA, but where we support all of our states and those producers within those states.
You know, nothing says summer or early fall to me like grilling a steak or a burger on a barbecue grill, and I heard some interesting statistics about just the sheer number of smokers and grills that were sold during the pandemic last year. I'm curious, what are we doing in the beef industry to make certain that beef is the protein people are putting on their barbecue grills and smokers?
We've had a wonderful opportunity throughout the pandemic to offer information and recipes and shopping advice and inspiration to consumers when they're searching for information on their phones, from their computers at home, while they're still at home, while they're working from home. So beefitswhatsfordinner.com was set up to be the perfect go-to resource for searching for that beef information. And we're still seeing that, especially through e-commerce sites and rebate apps on their phones, consumers continue to shop online for their groceries, and beef is set up perfectly to be accessible with beef information and recipes and cut choice guidance for consumers as they look for their next meal for their family. An example in Arizona is we are running right now a summer grilling digital advertising campaign. So as Arizona consumers are looking for beef information and recipes and how cattle are raised in Arizona, they're being served ads on Google and YouTube and Spotify audio listening to hear beef messages. Then those messages are the same consistent beef messages that are being played in states across the country. And that plays back to the benefits of working together between states and nationally through the Federation of State Beef Councils.
That's fantastic. You know, we talk a lot about promoting and advertising to consumers, but Dan, it's also important to get our message to other users of our product, correct?
Oh, absolutely. Look, we're about one thing, and that's increasing beef demand overall. Not just to our consumers that go to the grocery store and purchase, but also to restaurants and chefs that are going to, promote or, premiere that type of meal. When they start looking at what are they going to have on their menu, we want to promote new recipes, new ways, new cuts, and that's what the research portion of the dollars that we spend in Beef Checkoff are about, to reach them, as well as to show the nutritional benefits, and probably not necessarily right for this segment, but where we promote to doctors and nurses, and when we actually go into beef in the early years, which are some other things that we're dealing with and promoting at this point in time. We look at a broad brush when we're trying to increase beef demand and to show the ultimate consumers and those who are using our product, as you said earlier, license, to feel good about what they're consuming. We want to do that, and we're able to do that because we have the science and the data behind it. And so that's important, I think.
That's fantastic. Still ahead on Cattlemen to Cattlemen, we'll look at how the Federation of State Beef Councils is working to ensure consumers have all the facts they need when it comes to the beef industry and its sustainability. Stay with us.
Weeds will rob me of my investments. The weeds are not palatable to cows. They will not eat them. Or if they do eat them, some of them may be toxic. So there's a return on investment by allowing there to be more grass available to be grazed by the cattle.
For members of the cattle industry, it's important to manage their operations in a way that ensures they can continue to produce a wholesome beef product for years to come. Joining us now is the Executive Director of Issues Management and Public Relations for the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, Hillary Makins. Hillary, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So let's talk a little bit about sustainability and the kinds of things you're doing right now to try to address some of the misconceptions consumers have about the sustainability of the beef industry.
Absolutely. Well, this spring we kicked off a public awareness campaign that really started with a 6-part content partnership. And what that did is we went to large regional publications across the country and paired a local journalist with a local farmer or rancher to really tell their story. And what was unique is that all of the stories were about sustainability, but we let that local journalist hone in on a story that they thought would resonate with their audience, so that every story was a little bit different and really fit that local crowd. And then we are currently in market with a larger national public awareness campaign that started with Food and Wine magazine, and we are now with Wall Street Journal, New York Times, and Washington Post. And so the team has really been watching those publications closely to see some of the issues they're talking about, to get some of our stats and facts out that directly address those topics in those large publications.
That's outstanding news. And so you talk a little bit about ranchers and farmers sharing their story. What makes that so powerful when you get a rancher face to face with someone talking about the topic of sustainability?
Yeah, it's really important. Our consumer market research tells us that most consumers do trust farmers and ranchers as a credible source. So that's really good news for us. And so it's important for both farmers and ranchers to get out there and tell their story to their neighbors. But it's also important for us in our work to leverage those great stories we have and make sure we're getting that in front of the media.
You mentioned Washington Post, New York Times. I'm curious, what strategies do you all use to get the message out to more traditional forms of media?
Yeah, absolutely. We use a surround sound approach. So we use earned media, which is essentially the media that we don't pay for, and then we supplement that with some paid media. So we are in constant contact with those publications and those journalists, giving them information, building that relationship so they come to us in the future. But we can't just bank on that. So we need to use some of that paid media tactics, like we're doing the advertisements in some of those larger publications.
That's great. So is it too soon to talk a little bit about some of the results we're seeing, or what results are you seeing with that?
Yeah, so we're still in market with everything, so we don't have finals yet, but based on what those publications are telling us, they expect that by the end of this campaign we will reach more than 12 million consumers.
Wow, that's good news. Thank you for all the great work you're doing. It's critically important right now for our industry.
Thank you.
Up next on Cattlemen to Cattlemen, we'll tell you about an online video series that offers a valuable look at how beef is raised. That story when we return. Stay with us.
If you need a stock trailer built to stand strong in tough country, you need a Big Bend trailer. Designed and used by a family that runs cattle themselves.
I think one of the things that makes Big Bend different is that I don't know of any other trailer manufacturer that actually ranches for a living, and we get firsthand use. We get to know what works and what doesn't work, and if we find something that makes our life easier, we'll do it and design it into our trailer.
Big Bend trailers are packed with features. Well-designed latches, movable gates, LED lights, and an 1.5-inch gap around the edges for easy cleanup. Year after year, they keep building Big Bend trailers better.
Without a doubt, they're 10 times better than they were 25 years ago. Lots of options and features and user-friendly options that we have now that they didn't have back in the day.
Ranch tough at a fair price. Find out more at bigbendtrailers.com.
The National Cattlemen's Beef Association, a contractor to the beef checkoff, partnered with a group of culinary professionals called Chef's Roll to create a series of videos highlighting the importance of the Beef Quality Assurance Program for both cattle producers and the chefs who serve beef. Here's a look at one of those videos.
My name is Ryan Clark. I'm the executive chef at Casino del Sol in Tucson, Arizona. I'm a Tucson native, born and raised here. Absolutely love the local community. Worked here for about 15 years in the restaurant industry. Graduated from the Culinary Institute of America in Hyde Park, New York, and just love what I do.
My name is Dean Fish, and I ranch here in southern Arizona near Nogales on the U.S.-Mexico border. Beef Quality Assurance. It's a program ensuring that beef producers do the right thing. And by the right thing is taking care of the health and welfare of their livestock and being part of producing a safe, wholesome beef product.
Our signature dish is a dry-aged bone-in ribeye, and there's a reason it's one of our top sellers. We lightly rub local whiskey and then let it dry age for 35 days. The intensity of the dry age concentrates the flavor, makes the beef taste more flavorful, more tender, and more luxurious. The bone-in steak is cooked over cast iron heat, which creates a deep and even caramelized exterior. We finish the dish by basting the steak with an aromatic butter. The overused term farm to table is making a transition to chef to farm or chef to ranch. I think it's important that chefs visit the makers that they work with and see all the hard work firsthand. And my favorite part about touring the ranch was seeing the relationship that Dean has with the livestock. You can tell his passion and the care he has for the cattle go above and beyond. It's quite an amazing experience to see all the hard work on the ranch that brings beef to our tables at home and into our restaurants.
Being a farmer rancher means that we have a responsibility to properly care for the livestock and the natural resources that we raise those livestock on.
A chef to me it's a responsible position. You know, you're cooking for the public, and a lot of chefs don't think about nutrition, but we want to make sure that we're really fueling our bodies. Beef, it's what's for dinner.
And joining me now is Sarah Reese, Senior Executive Director of Brand Marketing for the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. So Sarah, I'm curious, incredible video we just saw. What kind of reaction are you getting from those chef's roll videos?
So first of all, let me tell you how excited the chefs that joined us for the video shoots are about this opportunity. It gave them an experience to meet producers and learn about cattle care, and I've heard over and over again what great opportunity that was. Second of all, chefs and consumers alike are really loving these videos. The videos have reached 1.3 million consumers. We've had over 650,000 video views, and 21,000 people have engaged with this content via social media. We hear from Chef's Roll that storytelling videos like this are really resonating with their audience. And so we know that it's something that we need to continue working on. That's outstanding news and great results, actually. I'm curious, one of the other trends that I read about is how in some cases beef is moving from center plate to an ingredient in the meal. What are you doing to encourage chefs to make certain beef is included as an ingredient in some meals that they may not initially think about beef? Yeah, we work with chefs on a lot of campaigns throughout the year. Some of them are in more traditional ways, like summer grilling. Yep. And other times we challenge chefs to really create dishes where beef's not traditionally an ingredient, like for Thanksgiving or for breakfast. Yep. And to do this, we work with organizations like Chef's Roll or the James Beard Foundation to create digital content or to create webinars to show chefs how to use underutilized cuts of beef. Mm-hmm. Why is it so important not just to educate chefs on what we're doing from a production practice standpoint, but also other influencers? It's getting harder and harder to be seen in traditional media outlets. So working with influencers is a way for us to reach a larger audience. Consumers really trust influencers that they follow and seek advice and guidance from that group of people. So as consumers want to learn more about food production and animal care, it's important that we're educating that group of influencers so that they can provide accurate information. And we do that by having ranch immersion experiences, providing them with webinar content, inviting them to events where producers are on panels to explain the process to them. Well, I compliment you for all that you and your team are doing to amplify the voice of American farmers and ranchers about beef production. I think it's critically important to driving beef demand. Thank you. Thank you. Still ahead, we'll talk about a program designed to show parents the value of feeding beef to their children at an early age. We've got that story when we return. Stay with us.
Stressors that trigger bovine respiratory disease are all around. So when you spot BRD in your herd,
Turn to Zuprevo, the fast that lasts. Zuprevo is rapidly absorbed in as little as 45 minutes and lasts up to 28 days. Because in the race against BRD, you need to win. Ready, set, Zuprevo. In case of human injection, seek immediate medical advice. For use in beef and non-lactating dairy cattle only. For prescribing information, talk to your veterinarian or visit Zuprevo.com.
NCBA and the Beef Checkoff work together to help consumers understand the valuable role beef plays in a healthy, nutritious diet for people of all ages. Here to talk more about these efforts is Dr. Shailene McNeil. She's the Executive Director for Human Nutrition Research at NCBA. Shailene, tell us just a little bit about what you're doing to help people understand the value of providing beef to particularly young kids.
Well, you know, there's just so much nutrition information that's come out. Consumers are very much interested in learning about nutrition, and we are now paying more attention to how young families are eating, especially infants. And a lot of people don't realize that the American Academy of Pediatrics, the new dietary guidelines, they encourage the nutrients in beef starting at around 6 months of age.
Wow.
But this is new information for not just parents, but even pediatricians. So we're working on raising awareness among pediatricians and parents about these new guidelines.
That's really exciting. And specifically, how do you get that information out to that target audience?
We know that pediatricians are lacking in information about nutrition in general. They're lacking in information about the new guidelines to recommend beef starting at around 6 months of age. So through our partnership with the Federation of State Beef Councils, we are working on reaching pediatricians with medical education, so continuing medical education so they can get up to speed on the new science, but then also actually going into pediatricians' offices, providing medical education and information for parents to pick up while they're there. Because parents have a lot of questions while they're in the pediatrician's office. They're learning about starting to feed their family, and we've got tips and how-tos. We're going to be in 2,200 pediatrician and birthing centers with information thanks to our partnership with the Federation.
That's fantastic news, because it seems to me like sometimes doctors are great doctors, but they sometimes lack a little bit in nutritional expertise. And I'm curious, what's been their reaction as you've tried to share this message with them?
Very receptive. I think there's a lot of curiosity. We know, and pediatricians know, that iron rates have been declining in children as people have become more interested in breastfeeding. Iron rates have actually gone down a little bit. So pediatricians are thinking about iron. They're looking for iron-rich sources. Beef is one of those good sources of iron. And so they're looking to learn. So medical education has been very successful. But then pediatricians need tips on how to help parents get that information. And that's where we can come in with safe and nutritious feeding practices for beef as well.
But it's safe to say that projects and promotions and educational efforts like these, they got to be rooted in science and research. So tell us about the role of research in these kind of
There
efforts.
is just no way that we as a Beef Checkoff or State Beef Council partners could go and work with pediatricians without science. The first thing that they're going to ask us for is, where's the research to back this up? And that's what we have. Thank goodness the Checkoff has been investing in nutrition research for more than 2 decades on this specific topic, introducing beef at around 6 months of age and looking for those benefits. And so we're able to take that science and back our message up with good science. And so we're seeing great receptivity to our messages as well.
Well, it's something that I think a lot of us always thought we knew, and now you've got the science to prove it. That's great news for the future of the beef industry. Thanks for all the work you're doing.
It's great to be here.
We'll be back to wrap up our show right after this. Stay with us.
It is inevitable. Like the rising and setting of the sun, your gravel driveway will need maintenance. Drudgery? Never. Be the right person with the right tools doing the job the right way by watching How to Maintain a Gravel Drive Using a Box Blade with Hydraulic Scarifiers. Brought to you by tipsnotebook.com. When better how-to videos are made, we will make them.
We know you're up before the dawn because the cattle rise before the sun. And you spend long hours in the saddle because the herd isn't always over the next rise. And you care for the land because you know it takes care of your family. And we know you do great work. And it's time to tell that story to the marketplace. IMI Global is here to help you do just that.
Did you know that Prefert makes over 1,000 different farm, ranch, and rodeo items? And now, thanks to Prefert Direct, it's easier than ever before to get access to every item Prefert makes delivered direct to your local dealer. For more information about Prefert Direct, visit us at Prefert.com. Prefert, America's #1 name in farm, ranch, and rodeo.
There's a lot of feedlots on the flyway of the majestic Canada goose. And the cowboys working at these feedlots see a lot of these big birds. They like the corn and silage as well as the steers. Jim is a journeyman feedlot cowboy and was demonstrating his ability with his rope as they pushed some poles up the alley to the vet shack. The other cowboys respected him and knew that his team rope and buckle was real. While displaying the proper angle and how to control the tip, he lost control. The rope slipped from his hand and shot straight up in the air. Coincidentally, the lead gander of a low-flying squadron of geese heading in for a lunch break flew right into Jim's loop. Honest, there were witnesses. The goose was slapped to the ground like a wayward tether ball. He rose in a squawk and sighted in on Jim and charged. Jim was riding Buck. Buck was only 3. And though he had adjusted to the roar of the feed mill and the klaxon of the bucket loader in reverse, he had never been attacked by maddened waterfowl. Buck swapped ends as Jim grabbed the horn. He approached the end of the alley at the speed of a Tiger Woods tee-off right towards the concrete feed bunk. Then, while Jim was debating whether to punch the ejection seat, Buck took to the air and sailed over the bunk. To no one's surprise, the pursuing goose lifted off the runway and soared between the lip of the bunk and the horizontal neck cable. Unfortunately, he was dragging 35 feet of 3/8 soft lay, right-hand twist, nylon rope. The tail of the rope whipped around the cable. The elasticity of the steel, the nylon, and the vertebrae allowed the feathered projectile to stretch far enough to spring the goose back across the feed bunk like Venus Williams returning a serve. He managed to bounce in a muddy spot and survive. The audience of cowboys hooted, hollered, and honked over the feat of Jim's heading a goose. Well, Jim regained his composure, eased the snorting Buck over to the bunk, and announced that tomorrow he would demonstrate his technique, goose healing. This is Baxter Black from out there.
Cattle producers across the country work hard to care for their animals and their land. The USDA's Natural Resources Conservation Service is there to help. Find out how you can work with NRCS to develop a conservation plan for your operation. Find possible funding resources for implementing conservation practices, or get free expert advice on ways to improve your farm or ranch. Visit the website nrcs.usda.gov today.
When the field is your office, you never get tired of going to work. Cut, rake, bale, repeat. New Holland offers the power and versatility to get through the day. From small squares to large squares and everything in between, New Holland has you covered. Visit your local dealer today to find out more. New Holland.
Welcome back. As we wrap up our program, I'd like Clay Bertram and Dan Gaddis to share some thoughts on what the future holds for the Federation of State Beef Councils. Clay, what's your crystal ball look like?
Well, we need to remember this is a producer-led organization, and that $1 investment is an $11.91 return to the producer-led organization. And as we look at all these campaigns that we've done over fiscal year 21, summer grilling, holiday campaigns, sustainability, we've reached over 94 million consumers.
Wow.
And so we build on that as we move forward. We're not giving up. We press on as we build beef demand. And that's really what the Federation of State Beef Councils is about, is moving that needle of beef demand, Kevin.
That's good news. Dan, what would you add?
I want to kind of jump on what Clay talked about, is just moving that needle of demand. And that really is our role, to increase the demand. And as we can increase demand for beef across the nation, even across the world, that's going to ultimately benefit our consumers. As we can make that pie bigger, more dollars available to go through the system to all the different segments of the beef industry, I think that's important. I know we've got other issues that often get talked about, on how those dollars are allocated, and those are policy issues that the Federation really has no business in, and we're not allowed to be in. Our whole goal is increasing those dollars, and then we'll talk about, on the policy side of things, about how we deal with some of the distortion that I think most people recognize in the current system today. But if we don't increase the beef demand, and if we don't all work together to do that, there's not a whole lot of dollars left for us to argue about.
And the encouraging thing is there has been tremendous progress made in the last 20 years in driving beef demand, hasn't there?
We are at a 30-year high in beef demand right now. 30-year high. And if you go back and look at, Cattle Facts obviously does a lot of informational sessions through NCBA and other cattle organizations, and you look at how beef demand was halved, before we started paying attention to what the consumer really wanted. And that's probably the biggest issue. We talked about sustainability. If we ignore those things, that demand drops off. We listen to those, things. We listen to the consumer. We got together as an industry overall, and we're at a 30-year high. I think, we can pat some people on the back that had those ideas in the vision, that have brought us to where we are today. And we need to say thank you to some of them.
It's a real testament to what we've done this last year through the pandemic.
Yes.
A 7% increase in beef demand at 58.5 pounds, where we've really come from, Kevin. And if you look at where we're at, whether you're a cow-calf producer, a seed stock producer, feedlot, or you're just a consumer, we're not only in the cattle business, we're in the beef business.
I agree. Yep. Fantastic. Well, thank you all for the countless hours you spend trying to navigate and see the future before the rest of us, so we can position beef for a bright future. We really appreciate it.
You bet. Thank you for allowing us to share our story and work for the countless hours of the beef producers out there.
Now, if you want to learn about some of the ways checkoff dollars are being used to increase beef demand, then check out the Beef It's What's for Dinner website. You'll also find great information you can use to talk to your friends and neighbors about the sustainability of the beef industry. Well, that wraps up this edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. Thanks so much for spending time with us. We'll see you again next week right here on RFD TV.